My ancestors came from a town in Sicily called Geraci, Sicily.
Father's father comes from Puglia in Italy, from a small town called Palo del Colo.
It was a city known as St. Peter Apostol in Calabria.
Between 1880 and 1930, over 20 million immigrants arrived in the United States. New York's Ellis Island welcomed approximately 12 million of them.
And Grandpa came from a small little town, mountainous town by Catania called Galliano.
Grandma came from Palermo, Sicily. She arrived in this country on February 10th, 1912.
4 million were Italian.
Grandparents came from a town called Culiano.
Naples.
My grandfather came here alone as a young man, I'm not sure of the year, by himself, and he left his wife and children in Italy. He came to find a place to live and to start a business.
Just coming to this country alone was a great opportunity to have a new life.
Italy viewed the United States as a land of opportunity. There are many areas of the world where Italians can go to seek work. However, the United States was seen as not just a place to work, but a place where there were advancements that you couldn't find elsewhere in the world.
They couldn't speak the language. They put them on a ship and sent them off for the better way. And I always asked my grandmother, why don't you go back? And so they would all say the same thing. There's nothing there for me because this was the better life. This is why they put them here. This is the better way.
While many chose to stay in New York and parts of northern New Jersey, where the need for unskilled labor was in demand, some traveled across the country, and slowly Italian communities began to be established all over the United States. Some settled in Long Branch. This is their story. In the late 19th century, the city of Long Branch would earn the title of Hollywood of the East, as lavish mansions and estates were built and the seaside resort took shape. The waterfront bustled with the sounds of beachgoers, and hotels began to line the coast. A rail line and pier were established, making the trip to the shore an easy one. Long Branch, with its scenic coastal location and proximity to major cities like New York and Philadelphia, became a favored destination for the wealthy industrialists, financiers, and socialites seeking refuge from the urban hustle and bustle. It also offered opportunities for work for the wave of newly arriving immigrants.
Long Branch was for the wealthy estate type living people. So as the Italian immigrants, like my parents, grandparents, great-grandparents, came in, they really began by servicing those wealthy estates, whether they did gardening, security, house cleaning, whatever.
So by nature, a lot of the immigrants who came here had a vast knowledge of agriculture, farming, and how to grow just about anything. And Italy in general, people have a vast knowledge of the appreciation of food and culinary to begin with. But yes, so a lot of them that would come here would seek Long Branch because there were a vast number of hotels and estates.
Immigrants often preferred settling in areas where there was existing communities of people who shared their language, culture, and traditions. As the Italian community in Long Branch grew, they established their own social networks and institutions to support each other.
In 1875, 7 Italian immigrant men decided to come together to establish the Amerigo Vespucci Society as a mutual aid organization to help themselves, each other, and other Italian immigrants in this area. At that current time, there wasn't any other place for Italian immigrants to go. There was a significant amount of discrimination towards Italian immigrants. Most of the Italian immigrants that came here were from southern Italy, south of Rome. So their education levels were not that pronounced. Their ability to speak English wasn't that good. There was no place for them to really go to seek camaraderie, financial assistance, to seek employment. So these 7 Italian men came together, and once they got to the number of 15, they established an official organization called the Amerigo Vespucci Society of Mutual Aid. They also provided assistance to each other and to each other's families. So when people came from Italy, they needed a place to stay between when they arrived here and when they got themselves on their feet and became employed. So Italians would take in other Italians.
Well, I remember going to my grandmother's house, and there was always somebody living there as well. That was another interesting thing. People would come from Italy, and that Italian community would take these people in and give them a place to live. I remember there was a man, his name was, we called him Chabol. Chabol was, well, don't touch that, that's Chabol's, you know, and he was somebody who came from Italy, and my grandmother gave him a place to live.
It wasn't uncommon to have 2, 3, 4 families in a home until those individual families could then find employment and get on their own feet. So they would provide that assistance as well. They also provided assistance in terms of, if an Italian immigrant came here, they would say, who do I go to if I need a dentist? Who do I go to if I need a barber? Who do I go to if I need a butcher? You know, and they would send them to specific people who would do those things, but would also not discriminate towards those Italians who would come to those shops and those services.
These Italian immigrants brought with them not only their traditions and strong work ethic, but also a deep love for the art of food. For Italians, it was not just about what was cooked, but who they shared it with, which is why the sharing of a holiday meal is so meaningful.
When I was younger, sometimes I would be turned off when people would say, oh, you're Italian, and they would right away talk about food, because there's so much more that we have to offer as an Italian-American community. We have art, we have religion, in terms of our dedication and faith of Catholicism, and the Vatican being located right in the center of Italy. You know, we have the history of the Roman Empire and the Roman Republic, which gave us, you know, these advancements, global advancements that we use today. However, culinary is something that now as an adult I appreciate more than I ever have.
It was Christmas, Easter, and New Year's. And we would always have family gatherings during those times. And there would be lamb.
Easter's lamb.
We'd have Lego lamb.
There would be antipasta.
Antipasta.
You know, the antipasta. We always have an antipasta.
And then Christmas, naturally, there was quite a bit happening with the food.
Christmas Eve with the 7 fish.
All the 7 fishes.
7 fishes.
But I distinctly remember my father having what was referred to as bacala, which is cod, and it was dried.
One thing that most Southern Italians celebrate, which you could see to this day still during this time of the year, in March, we celebrate St. Joseph's Day.
Us being Sicilian, that is a huge day, because St. Joseph was the patron saint of Sicily.
And most Italian-American communities, certainly most Italian-Americans in Long Branch, when they think of that, they think of the St. Joseph Zeppole, which is a beautiful round pastry filled with custard cream traditionally. You can also get it with cannoli cream. But I remember that growing up. We still celebrate it to this day. We still purchase them from St. Joseph's. The family gets together and we celebrate Joseph's. A lot of Italian-Americans are named Joseph. So my brother is named Joseph. And that's a tradition that we love, that we really enjoy. That's one tradition.
We walk into an Italian home, and the family would come from all over the house, and everybody would sit around the table to talk, and food would immediately be put out, and it was always a sense of family and hospitality.
Making the meatballs and frying them.
The meatballs and the spaghetti.
We always have spaghetti.
The braciole.
Macaroni.
And the raviolis.
Lasagna.
Lasagna.
Sunday dinner. Everybody and the family would be there for dinner. And that was part of how you lived.
In addition to their love of food, many immigrants also brought with them a deep devotion to their faith.
Italians came here and generally speaking are very faithful. The Catholic faith is prominent with Italians and Italian immigrants, especially in the South. And they instilled that in their kids. A lot of people from my generation went to parochial school for that reason. Holy Trinity School, St. Jerome School, Star of the Sea School.
Well, Holy Trinity Church was started because of the need for the Italian Americans coming or being here. there hadn't been a church, so Holy Trinity was established to help the Italian community.
And they'd have masses that started at 6 o'clock in the morning, and they ran until high mass was at 12. And every hour, they had a mass. The kids' mass was 9 o'clock. You had to go to the kids' mass, and but they had several festivals that they would run every year.
The 7 o'clock mass at Holy Trinity every day was done in Italian.
Done in Italian.
Was done in Italian.
So when I was a child, one of the traditions in Long Branch that the Italian American community congregated around was the Mount Carmel Festival at Holy Trinity Church. That was something that everyone looked forward to every year. There was an actual formal procession in this neighborhood, and they would take the statue of the Blessed Mother, the priests and the sisters and the altar boys would all dress up, and they'd proceed with a very large community behind them.
Processions that would come down Exchange Place and Prospect Street, there would be hundreds of people. And we had communion that would be First Holy Communion at that time. We would have almost 200 kids would be in there. I have pictures of it. You know, it's movies of it. It's utterly amazing.
And then it would be followed by a feast. And it was wonderful. It would be right in the Holy Trinity parking lot. And there was music, there were games.
When they had a grease pole, which had rewards at the top.
And they would climb up the grease pole, but they would always slide down because it was so greasy. So whoever got to the top won all the money.
Salamis and pepperoni sticks up top there, but it was all greased up, so they had to find innovative ways to get to the top.
There was, a dunking booth, and it would last a few nights, this festival, 2 or 3 nights, and it was something that the children looked forward to. A lot of food was cooked, sausage and pepper sandwiches, all that type of stuff, and it was packed because, again, the Italian-American community in this area was so vast that it was something that the whole community looked forward to in engaging in and celebrating, and I remember that fondly.
The church and organizations such as the Amerigo Vespucci Society provided a support system and a safe space where the majority spoke their language, shared their cultural background, and could offer assistance in the process of adapting to a new country. Sitting on approximately 92 acres, this area of town that encompassed both these organizations unofficially became known as Little Italy.
Well, this Italian community, specifically in this area, exuded your essential and typical Italian-American enclave.
Morris Avenue, Westwood Avenue, all Italians.
They were all Italian. That was Little Italy.
We didn't have a key. The door was never locked. We just walk in, even our neighbor's house.
A lot of these families had gardens in their backyard.
Everybody was growing. There were gardens everywhere. People would grow and trade and give and help each other. People were always, it was a sense of community.
And we knew everybody's family. There was no problem going over to somebody's house, knocking on the door. Can Joey come out and play? And that was pretty much it all the time.
Everybody knew each other.
Everybody.
And it was the greatest experience ever growing up in that neighborhood.
You really got to know your neighbors. Everybody was outside. Everybody took care of one another. If you were digging your car out, your neighbor was coming over to help you dig your car. It was like almost as close as the communities got with 9/11.
Businesses, the immediate businesses that were in that area, the prime ones were, they had Mazzacco's Pharmacy. They lived upstairs. You had Valentino's Market. They lived upstairs.
And Boldanza Bakery.
4 o'clock in the afternoon, Boldanza's would start kicking the ovens in.
Yeah.
The whole neighborhood smelled the bread. Which was unbelievable. You wanted the butt of the air. It's something you'll never forget. That's the neighborhood we grew in.
It's my grandmother and my father who started the business in 1919. And they bought it from a gentleman who lived on Poole Avenue. They bought the bakery for $500. And the first full loaves of bread that they got out of the bakery basically helped pay for the bakery. And then from then on, it became bigger and bigger because they kept on having to expand the business. And then he actually put the store along with apartments on the corner of Pool and Prospect. And that's the 411 Prospect Street address. And that's where the little grocery store and the front of the bakery where you can go in and buy the products. Did expand to South Jersey, to North Jersey, into Pennsylvania, into New York. One of the products that they used to have was Blimpie sub bread in New York City at what they used to call Blimpie bases. That was our bread. And then most of the hot dog and hamburger rolls that were on the shore during the summertime at the different places that served hot dogs and hamburgers was our products. They were famous for the bread, the pastries, the cakes, especially the wedding cakes. And the cakes would be enormously tall. In between, they would put styrofoam sections and coat it with the creams and stuff like that. And then the little top cake would be an actual cake, which you would kind of like keep, the wedding couple would keep, freeze it, and have it another time, an anniversary or whatever. But yeah, those cakes used to be 4 or 5 tiers in height.
Grandpa he actually learned the trade in Newark when he came over to this country. And he opened up the store on South Broadway. And then he got into partnership with someone who had the Prospect Street store. And then he ended up buying the whole store. And he ended up buying the house and the property behind the store, which is the house that I grew up in on Exchange Place. We had chickens in the backyard of the Prospect Street store, and we would catch them, we would butcher them. We had a slaughterhouse in the garage that was registered with the state, and we processed. We did the lambs at Easter, and we would take it from walking on 4 legs. And unfortunately, people look at that and say, "Oh, that's gross," and this, that, and the other thing. But you don't think about it. We're supplying what people need. People need to eat. The world needs to eat, and it has to come from somewhere. It doesn't just automatically appear in a package on a shelf.
You would leave school at the end of the day, and there'd be Valentino's Market on the corner, and some of us would get our lunch there in the morning and bring it to school. You'd walk in, and little Mrs. The grandmother Valentino would be behind the counter. She barely spoke any English whatsoever. And she was very tiny. She'd stand behind the counter, and we would walk in. If we didn't have enough to buy the candy, to have little candy boxes at the counter, and you could just pick, 1 or 2s of whatever you wanted and put it in a little brown paper bag. If you didn't have enough, she'd take out a piece of cardboard. She'd write your name and IOU, and she'd write down how much you owed, whether it was 30 cents, $1.20, whatever it was. And then at some point in time, you would go back later that day, that week, the following week, and you'd pay your debt, so to speak, at Valentino's.
Later on, Ocean View Bakery was on Morris Avenue. So you went down there for subs. My dad used to get pissed when I'd go down there and I'd pick up a sub with their bread and come back and have it. And then Nunzio's, the Silver Dollar Bar, which became Tuzio's, down on Westwood and Morris Avenue. That was all part of that neighborhood of going over to and getting the different foods and stuff.
Nunzio started in 1953, and my dad was making a thin crust pizza. My mother was making the sauce. We simmered the sauce for 8 hours, put it on in the morning. By the time they opened up for business, it was already cooked. My mom and dad had a very small menu, as you could see right there. I think my mom made sandwiches, the meatball, sausage, eggplant, and then they would have the veal parmesan, the dinners, and I built that menu up. Actually, me and my brother Louis, we put everything on it. We put pasta primavera. We did a shrimp parmesan. We had all this stuff right there. So I figure, well, I have all the things, so why not use them? Why not put it all to good use? And sure enough, I did well. I did very well.
My grandmother sold ice cream. She also sold many other things in the store. So when you open up the front door of the store, a doorbell would ring in the kitchen, and then she knew somebody was in the store. And many of the kids in the neighborhood would always come there for their ice cream.
The little shack on the corner, you had to walk up 2 or 3 cinder block steps to get in. And and you go in there, and for a nickel, you'd get an ice cream cone. That was a big deal.
As you walked into the store on the right-hand side, there was a large freezer case filled with ice cream, vanilla, chocolate, strawberry, butter pecan. And in the summertime, the other side had your lemon ice, the orange ice, also your ice pops, and Eskimo pies and sandwiches. The ice cream over there was only a nickel. It stayed a nickel from 1930 when they had the store till 1968.
But in terms of other businesses that were Italian American in Long Branch, where you could see and sense the Italian community, you didn't have to go far. In West End on Brighton Avenue, you had Primaveras. You'd go in, Rudy Primavera would make his homemade mozzarella. If you had your communion party, it was most likely at Sirianni's Friendly Cafe. Caputo's Bakery. Joe Caputo runs it now. His father, Jack, ran it before him, and I believe Jack's father ran it before him. So you had all these various businesses throughout Long Branch that were all owned by Italian Americans. The ingenuity of being independent, hardworking, rolling up your sleeves could be seen in every corner of Long Branch.
As Long Branch's Little Italy began to flourish, more Italian-owned businesses began to be established in other parts of the city. West End in particular began to become a booming business district and welcome their own share of Italian-owned businesses, as well as the up-and-coming area of North Long Branch.
In 1938, there was a gentleman named Ralph DeFazio, and he wanted to open up a bar, and he asked my grandfather to be his partner. My grandfather didn't have any money, and he actually went to a bar owner. I don't know his name, but he was on Broadway, Long Branch, and he asked to borrow like $3,000. The bar owner said, "Why should I loan you the money? I don't even know you." And my grandfather said, "Well, because I'm honest." And he goes, "Well, I'll tell you one thing. You say hello to me every day. And because you say hello to me, I'll give you the $3,000. But you can't open a bar near me." He says, "You can open a bar at the West End, in West End of Long Branch." And that's where they opened on Brighton Avenue, and they named it the Friendly Tavern. In those days, he basically just made sandwiches and liquor. It was an old man bar. People would walk in. The train used to stop on Brighton Avenue, so everybody would get off the train and hit the bar, or hit the bar and then get on the train and go to wherever they were going. In 1959, my dad was a builder, went to Korean War, and did not like the bar business at all. And my grandfather forced my father to quit building and go into the bar business. My father ended up buying the building next door to where the bar was and created a pizzeria, and it was called the Friendly Cafe. My father ran the restaurant pizzeria from 59 to, I would say, 1972. He built a banquet room and wanted to get into weddings and all that good stuff. I went to Culinary Institute of America, and my brother Michael went to Johnson & Wales. So we both graduated in 1979, and Michael went to work for Marriott, and I went to work for my dad. And that's when we changed the name in 79 to Sirianni's Friendly Cafe, and we got more into doing bigger banquets, weddings, and things like that.
He started working for his brother who needed help, so he stayed there, learned a lot about the grocery business, and eventually, after a few years with them, he moved out and started on his own. Got the idea that maybe a food line of Italian specialties, that he would become popular if he opened up a store. And they had contacts in Italy, and he was starting to import products, and they just got to love it. To come to the store and see the different items they couldn't get, but they could get it in Primaveras. Naturally, he wanted me to work with him. At first, I wasn't too happy because I couldn't go out for school sports, but eventually I did work with him. I was there for 50 years. Somehow we made bread that they still talk about, a bread called Rudy Roll. It never slowed up. It was good.
He opened in 1960 and ran it as a family business. And my father, being a little bit of different personality than most, at like a young age, like 12, 13, like really 14 years old, really being involved in business, and kind of took over from there. Back in the 80s, that whole South Broadway area was kind of run down. So we went from being like a big retail bakery, people coming in and getting their stuff, to my father had to branch out and start doing wholesale stuff. So we did a lot of wholesale Kaiser rolls and wholesale wedding cakes and pastries, just because you weren't getting people walking in off the street. So I'd say probably like 84, 85, I remember going to council meetings with my dad, hear what was going on. So somewhere in like 86, I think my father acquired the property here where Ursula Plaza stands. And we were out of business for like 15 to 18 months while the shopping center is being built. And in 1988, September 13th, 1988, my father reopened Caputo's inside Ursula Plaza. Our main staple is our Italian pastries, cannoli, suiedel, Napoleon's lobster tails, Italian cookies, pignoli cookies, biscottis. Bakery is not just like 1, 2, 3, 4 different items. We're hundreds of items here, depending on the time of the year.
Just as generations have passed down cherished recipes and stories around the dinner table, the Italian presence in Long Branch has left an indelible mark. Their stories echoing through new establishments with new owners and modern touches, but with the same warmth and hospitality. Although many have shut their doors forever, some have withstood the test of time, welcoming customers both old and new. Others have created new paths of their own to carry on their family's legacy. It is their story, the Italian immigrant story and those like it, that is not only a testament to the dedication, resilience, and innovative spirit that our ancestors brought with them, but something we will carry with us through generations.
In 1972, they had 30 trucks delivering products in basically 3 states, New Jersey, Pennsylvania, New York City. But then sadly, after 70 years, the bakery shut down. And I think it was mainly because of the change in how bakery products were being produced. Supermarkets were opening up bakeries in their own individual stores, so that didn't help the operations. Couldn't come up with a cheaper way of doing it, so it was more expensive. And people just had other ways to get products that were cheaper.
It was open for almost 50 plus years. She passed away and they just sold the property, and that was it.
Oh, I just figured it was time. My brother was tired, and I waited for that guy to come with the right amount of money, and he did. He came, and I was holding off, and finally he came.
I ended up leaving my dad in 1989. I actually went to work for Marriott Marquis in Manhattan, and my brother Michael finished off with my dad in the restaurant until it sold, I believe, 1991.
I thought it was time. Nobody really wanted it after that. That was it. We sold it.
They were getting up in the years. I mean, they were all closing in on 70. And he had an opportunity to sell the business, which they did, which was a big move.
Yep.
I remember he came home and told my mother, we sold the business, we sold the store. My mother didn't believe it.
Nobody believed it.
Well, she was always fair, and she always loved her customers. And one thing, if a child didn't have a an ice cream cone and somebody else had the nickel, she would give them an ice cream cone because she didn't want anybody to be left out. If somebody was eating ice cream, you had to eat ice cream, even though you didn't pay for it. She gave you an ice cream, cone. She had a great heart.
Restaurants and the culture that we have in our country today are Rome South, Southern Italian. They were the fishermen, they were the farmers. They came here for the better way. That's why you have pizza, you have lasagna, you have macaroni, whatnot, because that's a southern Italian trait, whereas Northern Italian was more affluent. They didn't come here like the Southern Italians did. But your hat's got to go off to these people. I mean, you talk about, the hard life that they had. It's what they went through. You admire them. You really do.
On my father's grave, a stone, there's a saying, we came not empty-handed here, but brought a rich inheritance. So it was all those things that were Italian in nature that we brought over here, plus all of the values of loyalty, friendship, compassion, all of those types of virtues that we had instilled in us as young kids were part of that Italian culture.
And they were really, like I say, they were pioneers in the food business in the Long Branch. They were.
I'm sure they're all missed by not only the family, but the neighboring people. Because the people that I talk to, and they know I'm a Valentino. Oh, I used to love to go to your grandmother's store. I used to love to go uptown store. That's where my dad worked. And they just loved it. It was good. It was a good time.
And they gave us our grandparents gave us where we are today.
So this is the history that we need to keep alive and keep talking about so that future generations are aware how hard these immigrants worked. And if these walls could talk, the stories that they would have, the rich stories of culture, history, tradition.
When people tell me, when they go, Sirianni, are you related to, and when they tell me the restaurant, my biggest thing is I smile and I say, thank you for the memory, because it's been so many years now that it's just disappearing. Another 10 years and nobody will know what it is. So, I wish everybody could just remember that there was this, old type family restaurant that catered to your needs. But yeah, you would always want somebody just to remember my dad.
So we grew up calling it sauce. And my theory from everything I've read over the years regarding sauce and gravy is, in Italian, there is no true word for gravy.
My mother always distinguished it this way. If you cooked it up real quick, it was sauce. If you cooked the stuff on a Sunday morning with the braciole, that's gravy. And cooks all day. So that's the way she distinguished it. Sauce and gravy.
Always gravy. I don't care what they say. It's maybe tomato sauce. That's the meatless gravy, but it's always gravy.
But I went to culinary school. Gravy is made with a meat base. So my grandmother on my mother's side called it gravy, and it had the gravy meat.
I have to say, we never ever referred to it as gravy.
To me, if it's with meat, or you made it with meat, or it's going to be with meat, then it's gravy.
sauce because sauce is red, gravy's brown.
So who has the recipe for the Rudy roll? That's what I need to know. That's really why I'm here. This is all just undercover work for me.
You know what I say? I say, I have the Rudy roll recipe, but my memory's forgot. I can't give it to you.